before, Doug, wasn't there, a little bit to what
Yep.
kind of catches up.
Yep, there we go.
I see it now.
Me too.
Okay, now you should see like a title screen.
Yes, we've got the app. There you go. Now we've got the title screen. Good.
Okay. Real quick, just some of the things you can do with a longitudinal G graph before we do that. Just a couple of like definitions. I hope I don't want to insult anybody here by being too simplistic or whatever, but I'm going to do what I think will work, and you guys, I hope I don't insult anybody. Acceleration is how fast your speed or velocity is changing, and longitudinal acceleration is how fast your speed is changing in a straight line. And acceleration can be positive, where the speed is increasing. It can be negative, where our speed is decreasing. Or if it's zero, that means there's no change in speed. In other words, if you're cruising along at 60 miles an hour, you're not accelerating. That's going to show as zero. If you're going from 0 to 60, you're accelerating. Or if you're going from 60 to 0, you're accelerating, but in a negative direction. They use a measurement in longitudinal and lateral acceleration. The main measurement is a G, and it's kind of an easy way to work with numbers so that you're not working with more complicated numbers. But just for your information, a G in the metric system is 9.8 meters per second per second. That means your speed is changing by 9 meters per second every second. Or here's the same thing in the imperial. I use the metric system a lot. I love it, and I've been using it for years. And even when I do my data stuff, I'm usually on the metric system. And if you want to do this like in miles per hour, 1 G is equal to 22 miles per hour per second. So if you start at 0, the first second you're going to be going 22 miles an hour. Next second you're going to be doing 44. Next second you're going to be doing 66, etc. if you're doing 1 G acceleration. Now, some of the things we can determine using the longitudinal G graph, one of them is we can pick out the point where we're applying the brakes, seeing if we're braking at the same point each lap. We can also do that with a brake trace as well, but there's some things we can do with a longitudinal G graph that don't necessarily show up on the brake trace. We can look at consistency of brake application, see if we're doing it consistently lap after lap. We can check to see if we're using the full braking potential of the car. We can look at trail braking technique. And there's some couple other things we can do. We can check if we're shifting too early or too late. And we can check our speed, our shift speed and efficiency. One of the things, too, that you never just use, as far as what I've read in my own experiences, you never just use one single graph. You're usually looking at several different graphs to either confirm what you see or to get additional information. So we're going to be looking at longitudinal G, but we're going to be looking at some other graphs as well. I picked, since I'm a road racer primarily, I picked a road course, and this is Road America. And I've picked a section of the track at the end of a long straightaway that has a heavy braking zone here. And you're going to see the car is going to be slowing down from, I don't know, this is in kilometers, 180 some kilometers, down to around 80 kilometers. So this is the area we're going to be focusing on right now, looking at the longitudinal G. Just to kind of make a point here, to start out, this is the speed trace. And most of you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with this now if you've been looking at graphs a little bit. Anytime the graph goes up, that's an increase in speed. And anytime the graph goes down, that's a decrease in speed. And if we look at throttle, we're going to see the same thing. If the trace is going up, that means we're increasing the amount of throttle. And obviously, if the trace comes down, we're going to see a decrease. And not to belabor this thing, but if we look at brakes, we see the same thing. Up is an increase, down is a decrease. The problem comes when we look at longitudinal acceleration. First, we have a zero line here. The zero line in those other graphs would all be somewhere around the bottom here. But with the longitudinal G, we have a zero line, not necessarily, close to halfway in the graph. Now, question here. When the trace goes down, this should indicate that the car is slowing down, because remember, this is acceleration, either increasing or decreasing. The real question here is, when the graph goes up, is that showing an increase or a decrease? This gets a little bit tricky with the longitudinal acceleration graph. When I first started looking at these, I was a little confused initially, because I was into this mode of, if it's going down, it's decreasing. If it's going up, it's increasing. With the longitudinal G graph, that's not really the case. Okay, let's start with a comparison of speed and our longitudinal G graph. When the longitudinal G graph starts down here, that indicates the car is slowing down. And look down here on our speed trace, the speed is dropping, so obviously the car is slowing down. Now, let's look over here at the other side, at the very end of our slowing period. We start here, we're slowing down all the way down to this point here. What's happening on the longitudinal G trace? It's come down, it's held kind of steady over here, now it's going back up. But as it's going back up here, nothing tells us that the car is speeding up. In fact, it's not. It's still continuing to slow here. So the key is, whenever the longitudinal G trace drops below the zero line, that's when the car begins to slow or is slowing. At any time the G trace goes above the zero line, that's when acceleration begins. So I'm hoping I'm not beating the obvious to death here, but I know from my own experience this was a little confusing at the beginning. Another way to look at this real quick, if we run a line across here, here the G trace is coming down, and we're at minus 0.8 Gs. Well, here the G trace, oops, sorry, went back, I need to go back a slide here, clicked it. Okay, here the G trace is on the way back up, but we're still at minus 0.8 Gs, indicating we're slowing. So what this is showing us is the car slows very rapidly in the beginning. It's kind of holding a steady rate of deceleration here, and then gradually as we come up, the car is still slowing, it's just not slowing as fast, until finally we get to this point where we're starting to accelerate, and that shows down here on our acceleration, our speed chart. And we can kind of prove this if we take a look at the throttle and brake trace along with our longitudinal acceleration and our speed. Here's where our brake application begins. Here's where the car begins to slow down based on our longitudinal G, and here's where our brake application ends. And here's where we go back above the zero line. And that jives very nicely with what shows up on our speed chart here. We slow down, we begin to slow here, and we're finished slowing down here. Okay, let's take a quick look at what happens when we go above the zero trace. This is where acceleration begins, and the car, this shows acceleration all the way up here. Any place we're above the zero line, we're accelerating. This is from a spec racer Ford, so the acceleration is kind of minimal at best, but you can still see that it's above the zero line and the car is accelerating through here. So we get over to this point, and there acceleration ends, and then we begin to slow down again. And you'll notice here, it's fairly rapid. The car's accelerating pretty good over here, but now once as we continue to accelerate, the rate of speed change or acceleration begins to slow down quite a bit. And this is pretty typical. Like when you're in fourth or fifth gear, you're not going to accelerate any near as fast as if you're in second gear. Something else that shows up here on the longitudinal acceleration graph, this is a shift point. And in this particular case with a spec racer Ford, take a look at this. You can see that at some point the trace actually goes below the zero line, which indicates that for a short distance while that shift is going on, the car is actually slowing down. I think this spike here, I think, is because I had it set for automatic clutch, and I wasn't lifting the throttle. I was speed shifting there, and I think that's why this blip goes up like that. If you take a look at the speed trace at this same point, here's our shift. Look at the speed trace down here. It's very small, but can you see how it slows down and then increases again during that shift period? So you can use this longitudinal acceleration as a way to kind of analyze your shifting. Maybe you could be shifting faster. Oh, the other thing you can do, while I think of it, you can also use this to check to see if you're shifting at the right point. I don't have any graphs to show that, but basically the idea is your acceleration or longitudinal G before the shift should be about the same as the longitudinal G after the shift. And if one is higher than the other, it indicates either too early a shift or too late a shift. And this is a pretty easy way to determine the correct shift point for a given car. All right, let's see. One of the things you can do is you can check for consistency of your braking with this. If each lap you're running the average here looks to me about negative 1.2 Gs. So if every lap you're doing about the same, that means you're braking pretty consistently. The other thing you can tell from this is if you're familiar with a particular car, like the spec racer Ford, this should be a fairly good deceleration rate. And if you don't achieve that on a different track, then you maybe need to investigate exactly what's going on there. Maybe the track, maybe the temperature, any number of things. But on a given track, on a given day, if you're braking consistently, this should look about the same across here. This is also a braking area. Now, my question would be, why isn't this is about 0.8 of a G, minus 0.8. This is down to 1.2. Why aren't they the same? And it could be a braking problem, but it also could be something as simple as maybe this corner doesn't require as much braking. And in a car like a spec racer Ford, you really can't afford to overbrake and slow the car down too much. It turns out in this particular corner, it's more a question of not trying to slow the car down too much. Here's something that's interesting. One of the things you can pick out. Notice the graph here. There's a gradual slope when you first begin slowing the car. That's not good. It should drop, not straight, but it should drop at a very consistent rate. You shouldn't have this little gradual slope and then a drop. This indicates possibly poor braking technique. It could indicate that you don't have a breakpoint picked out that you can consistently use. If this happens lap after lap, it probably indicates you're doing something wrong. If it's one lap, well, maybe that's just you were following another car and you didn't want to tail end them or something. But this is something you can look at and determine a little bit about your braking technique. And in this case, we can kind of correlate the two. Here's our brake trace going up there, and you'll notice that the brake trace also kind of tapers up gently, and then the brakes go on a lot harder. Okay, so we confirm that with a brake trace. Okay, let's see next. Here you can see how the longitudinal G-trace kind of mirrors what you're doing with the brakes here. You'll notice the brake pressure is decreased, increases, decreases, increases, and you'll see the same thing here mirrored in the longitudinal G-trace. My next question, I guess, would be what's causing that? Is that bad braking technique? Is there something going on there that we should investigate? And one of the answers to that is this part of the trace actually indicates trail braking. And you might notice here on the speed trace, it's pretty constant coming down here. Then all of a sudden, it kind of like levels off a little bit. It's a much gentler slope. And this corresponds with the same area where we're reducing the deceleration rate quite a bit. And this happens to be the trail braking area in this particular corner. We can kind of illustrate that a little better, or prove it, I guess is a better word. I've added a steering wheel trace here, and the steering wheel trace, kind of like the longitudinal speed trace, has a zero line, and turning left is above and turning right is below, or it could be vice versa, depending on how your software is set up. But take a look at this. Here's where our trail braking seems to start based upon the longitudinal G and based upon our speed. And notice that ties in nicely with exactly where we're beginning to turn the steering wheel. So that's our turn-in point. And then over here, this is where we finished up our braking. And notice throughout this whole trail braking turn, we're braking and we're sterning at the same time, which essentially is the definition of trail braking. So we can use this to kind of analyze how effective our trail braking is, or if there's a problem. I suspect what was going on here, the reason there's some spikes here, is the brake pedal was being modulated a little bit to keep from locking up the brakes as the car was turning in. Okay, that's pretty much finishes what I have here. The one thing I wanted to mention, I know Doug mentioned a book by Bob Knox, which is an excellent book. I have it, and I think I agree with Doug. It's probably one of the best. But there's another, it's an e-book out there, and it's called Data Logger Secrets Revealed, and it's great for anybody that's just getting into this. It was available at this website, but I just checked it today, and I wasn't able to get through there. It possibly has been removed, but I do have a copy of it. And if anybody is interested in me sending them a copy, or maybe what I could do is I could give Doug the copy, and he could post it. I'm not sure if that's legal or not, but he possibly could post it on his website.
I'd have to check with the author first. I'd have to check with the author first. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can even get a hold of the guy because the website, if the website is in fact down. But either way, would there be anything that would prevent me from emailing it to somebody if they? It was free. I mean, this was not. You didn't pay for this.
Sure. Yeah. No, there doesn't think there'd be any problem with that.
Okay, so if we can't put it on Doug's website, certainly you're welcome to email me. And it's a PDF file, and I think it's small enough to send through email.
Yeah. I'm going to be happy to do the legwork to track the guy down and see if we can include it on the website, because that would be great. That would be great stuff for folks to have.
I can give you his name later.
Sure.
So if the website's down, maybe you can track him through his name. Okay, that's pretty much all I have. And if anybody has any questions, far away.
I'm as a road racer and just trying to learn the Lotus 79. I was driving the FW31, and it was just, for a 70-year-old man, that was too freaky fast for me. But I jumped on this Lotus 79, and Ralph, that helped me out a lot, because I'm doing a lot of trail braking and acceleration and deceleration, and wondering why my speed's not up. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Well, it was my pleasure. I enjoy doing this stuff. Kind of. I hope it wasn't too basic. I mean, sometimes you just don't know where to,
No,
anyway, thank you.
I thought it was excellent, Ralph. I really got to thank you. Kudos to you. That was an awesome presentation, and that's hopefully what that kind of thing we're going to see more of in the future. Because the more we can make this users group meeting useful, the more people are going to attend, and the more folks are going to learn. And I think there was a lot of good, straightforward, basic information on that. I was saying earlier that I'm not the world's best DAG, and that's for sure. And I was even looking at things and saying, okay, yep, that makes sense. I get it now. So I thought that was wonderful. Thank you very much, Ralph. That was a really wonderful presentation. And now we're going to move on, I guess, to the unless anybody else has any other questions for Ralph. Okay, so I guess we're going to move on to the less scripted portion of the evening. I unfortunately threw my back out yet again, and so I haven't been able to get as prepared and up to speed as I'd like. But one of the things that I'd like to talk about a little bit, and actually, Ralph, you gave me a couple of ideas for new features as well. One is I'd like to add in highlighting the zero line better. I really like the dashed line. I thought that really brought out, and probably would be a little bit helpful to at least have the option to highlight it if you wanted, so you can see things more clearly. The other thing that I'm going to be looking at here is the adding a multi-lap plot, so you can plot all your laps on top of each other. Thinking about having it just be two plots, one signal each, but it will plot every lap that you do, and give you a quick way to turn on individual laps, so you can compare the two. Of laps that you've driven quickly to kind of get an idea of, Ralph, when you were talking about looking at being consistent in your braking, it would give you a better idea as, hey, am I being consistent when I'm looking at this or not? So I think that'll be a nice feature that I'm kind of thinking is more important than what I really wanted to talk about, which was the tire page. There's been a number of folks that have been talking about tire page, and I quite frankly don't know what to do with it, because there's so much data to present to you guys. I don't know what you're looking at. I find the ride heights page to be plenty confusing, that there's enough stuff going on this particular page, and every model that I've come up with so far for the tire page is this exact thing, but with three or six or nine signals, or which are many as 10 or 11 signals for the left, right, front, center, or for each of the four corners of the tires. And I'm really kind of interested in what you guys are interested in seeing.
Well, luckily you have a crew chief in here. One of the things that I would definitely look forward to seeing, because this is also one of the reasons why I swap between using your software and using Motec, is trying to pick apart the tire data as far as what it's doing through the corners, but also as an indicator is, okay, what's the degradation like? So something showing the tire temps as they're going through the corners, maybe, or heat bands, or however you'd want to do the graphical UI for it. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, but something to show what the tires are going through is there more, when you're going through the corners, do you need more, is there something that you can indicate, like, do you need more camber, or is the toe off for people who can look at the tire data enough to see the toe that way? And also, when it comes to the degradation of the tires, because a lot of people like to complain, especially on the oval side, that you've got 3-4 laps of tires, and then after that you're skating on ice. Well, if you're trying to figure out a way, like in what you do with the fuel report page you have, gathering the percentages of wear to say, okay, it drops 2% in these 4 laps, but in the next 4 laps it only drops 1% or something like that. However the calculations would go, and that would kind of give an idea as, okay, if you're saving, if you're trying to save your tires for a long run, okay, this is how long they're going to go for, but if you got like that last 5-6 lap sprint to the end, okay, this is probably how long they're going to last.
Okay, so starting with the temperatures, because this is where I think we're kind of ending up. You'd like to see, you'd be happy instead of with the plots, maybe just a thermal scan of the lap as it goes through and as it heats up, going from green to red or whatever the color bands might be. For each section of the tire, like for example, going across a band here, a band here, a band here, that would do the inside, middle, and outside.
I mean, honestly, I think that would, sorry, I got tongue-tied. I think it would just depend on the person. Some people that they like to see just the plot. Some people they like to see the bands. I mean, it all depends on how people actually just like to see it. I mean, it doesn't matter for me either one. I both get the exact same amount of data from both pages, because there's no consistent actual way to tell. Okay, the heat across the tire, we've only got those 3 sections that iRacing gives us. I mean, in actual tire, when you look at it, I mean, you can go more than just 3 sections on the tire. You can go however many you want, But with what we're given, because of how iRacing, how they give it to us, I mean, it's really not going to matter as far as which way you put it in. I mean, if you can put in an option as to whether to see it as a heat band or a plot line, I mean, that would probably be able to please both sides of that. But as long as there's a way to at least tell what the tire is going through when it's going to on the track heat-wise, then you should pretty much be covered.
Okay. And are the bar graphs on the sides any use? And is the track map any use? Or should it just be one great big plot?
The track map is definitely going to be a huge use, because just for the simple fact that you can see, like, well, when it comes to ovals, I mean, it's pretty obvious and basic, because most ovals, the corners are about the same shape anyways. But when it comes to road courses, you've got the long sweeping corners, and then you've got the chicanes, and then you've got the hairpins. Seeing how the tires react through all those different corners, and you can see on that part of the track, that's where what it's going through. Like, if you can look at the track map and you tend to take a corner, early braking, you can see how much faster the tire heats up when you're going to that corner compared to another corner where you don't brake as early, because it could be a long, a wider corner or whatever. Then you can see how the tire heats up differently than that. Or you can, looking at how the tires react going from one set of corners through maybe a chicane where you've got that slight movement, back to another corner. Okay, how much time do the tires actually have to cool off? If I'm doing something wrong, if I'm putting too much heat in them before I go into that corner, that's probably why I'm sliding through the corner. Stuff like that.
Okay, so and jumping over on the tire wear side, it kind of sounds, if we can combine the fuel report and the tire report at the same time, you can get an idea of. Have you seen the page when you're racing? And it shows the laps left and all that fun stuff.
Oh, I use that in an actual calculator to calculate how many laps that my drivers are going through. You can ask a couple of my teammates right here, actually, Craig and Evan. We were in a race together at Watkins Glen, and every lap I was punching numbers on my actual calculator, telling every lap telling Craig to save more. We're this much shy. We're this much shy.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's actually the thing. I mean, and if that's going to be the thing that, as far as tire wear, just getting an idea of how much you're going through, and just to see it per lap, and just give
exactly.
give you a number of how many laps are left in that tire to a certain percentage. And I guess do you typically change at 0%, or is it something like 20%, or?
We mostly do oval. That's typically our focus. So it really just depends on the track. I mean, if place like Atlanta, okay, we got 6 laps on the tires. Bring them in. We need new tires. Place like Daytona, now we can go probably about 20 laps before we actually need tires. If we come in, it's because the rest of the field came in. So there's different tracks where the fuel's going to run out before you even have anything on the tires, or the tires are going to have nothing left on them before you're even close to being empty on the tank. So like where you have your fuel and the fuel report, how you have the different strategies. If you're going an aggressive strategy, a standard, conservative, and you get those different ranges based on the different labs. With the tires, that would something it kind of probably be a little bit difficult trying to do that same type of strategy because it would actually have to have the drivers start clean runs. But like if you were to take the data source and the reference source, it's always if they're using the same setup, but they just want to compare. Okay, if I abuse tires right off the bat, or if I save them, then it probably compare. Okay, aggressively, this is how long the tires are going to last for that short run, or conservatively, this is how long the tires are going to last. In the long run.
Sure. Okay. I think I have an idea of what you want. I think Kyle, you may be hearing me from me offline here, just to go over what I come up with, because I actually think that actually gives me a lot more focus. I've been floundering on this for the last 3 weeks. I've come up with about 10 different designs, and every single one I've hated because it's had so much data presented, but it didn't tell you anything. But now you're narrowing things down and giving it. I try to look at things and try to make things more visual so that it's easier to use. I like the idea of doing a heat map type kind of trace if possible, and maybe actually combining the two so you can have one or both at the same time. Because I think it's just it's a better visualization, and which I really think is the key. It's why I'm a big fan of the track map. I really like the idea of being able to plot like the brake and the track and brake and the throttle on it, and look at a reference lap compared to yours, and bam, it jumps out right at you. Where you're braking too early, where you're braking too late, compared to the guy that's going faster than you. So anything I can do to make it more visual. Do you guys agree with that?
Having that heat band would, if you are braking too early, you could be able to see it because the tires are going to heat up really, really quick.
Sure. Now, do you guys agree with that general philosophy? Because that's kind of where I'm trying to keep things. I mean, I kind of don't like the fuel report because it's all numbers and letters and it just kind of isn't visual. But
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I read somewhere, I don't remember whether it was this month or last month, that iRacing was going to concentrate more on tires and going to put marbles up along the edge of the road and everything else to make it look like really get the experience of driving on a well-rounded track or a well-rubbered in track or so on and so forth. Is this true, or are they working on it, or what's going on with that, or have you guys heard anything?
I haven't heard anything except for I think I maybe saw something in the forum. Somebody mentioned something, but that's about all that I've saw.
Okay.
I think there was something that iRacing produced indicating, I forget what they call it, active track or something like that.
Dynamic track. Dynamic surface model.
Change. Yeah, the surface will change as the race goes on.
That's
sure they're actually working on that, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I mean, they're going to make it as realistic as possible. They've got a lot of competition out there.
Well, have you guys seen the video towards it?
Yeah, it's out there on YouTube somewhere. I'd have to look it up, find it, but
they have it on their channel.
Yeah, I think that's what I saw. Is the video?
Yeah, I think it was on their YouTube channel. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Kyle, thanks for all the input and stuff. I really appreciate that. I'm actually going to have to watch this replay over again so I can make sure I've got everything that you said. Does anybody else have any other ideas or what they might think is more important than the tire model or things that are missing? Really, this is your guys' product. I want to make it the best tool for you guys, so let me know what I got to do.
Well, I like the heat thing. Go ahead.
The only thing that comes to mind for me, and this probably has little bit more to do with what Ralph presented tonight is that in some of the books I've read, they talk about rotational speed of the tire. You know, what the speed of the tire is compared to what the car is actually going. So it more than anything, it reflects if you're locking up the front tires or the rear tires going into turn. It's funny, Ralph showed Road America. Turn 5 is one of those. You come down the hill at 190 miles an hour and go into a 50 mile an hour sharp left-hand turn there to go uphill, and those are the kinds of things that I find very interesting, because I've always felt that my area where I need to improve is in the braking area. I'm certainly fast enough on the top end, looking at the data I have, but I think because I'm using a set of plain old G25 positional pedals versus one that does it by pressure, is that I've always felt that that's where I would like to see some data as to if I'm applying too much brake pressure or not.
Sure. So you'd like to have a fixed braking page, just like we have for steering, almost. You know, that if we had something that listed launch G, lat G, steering wheel, brake, throttle, and then the 4 wheel speeds, that would probably be an interesting thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I mean, it's not anything I would want you to do special, but you know, unless it's something that I could actually do in the sandbox area.
Sure, you can do that. Matter of fact, I don't know if you guys noticed that, but Ralph was using the sandbox pretty much exclusively for much of what he was laying out today. Yeah, but you should be able to. Let's get rid of this signal. Let's get rid of these guys. Okay, this is the first time I've been in the sandbox during a demo that it hasn't blown up. Now it's going to blow up, but at least I'm excited that it lasted this long. So it's always been one of those things. But you should be able to take. Does this track have wheel speeds? I don't know. I don't think I have wheel speeds in this guy. Got shock velocities, but no wheel speeds. I'll have to look for them. But you should be able to draw out. For example, just coming back to here, drawing in a couple of distance plots, dropping them in, laying them out one on top of the other, and then coming back to the signals, and we're just going to grab shock velocities just because we can, and just plotting and just dropping them just like that, and you can lay them out one on top of the other. You should be able to do something like that very quickly. But the braking stuff is actually something I've really been looking at as well, because I really like. Does anyone use the steering page, or am I the only one that likes that?
I use it from time to time. By the way, I did look. You do have wheel speeds. They're all the way down to the bottom.
Oh, did I miss them? Okay.
Well, at least mine says. I don't know if I'm on the same. I just updated today, so.
The steering page is great in the sense of, I think that at least for me is that it gives you an idea of where you're losing time because you're putting too much input into the steering wheel, causing it to scrub off speed and stuff like that. So.
Okay, yeah, I really like the graphs on the left. That if you get, especially for road racing, if you start getting that S shape, you start knowing you're putting in a whole bunch of understeer into the car, or worse, when it starts looking like an X, you know you've got understeer and oh my gosh, oversteer, which I never want to see. But okay, well, I'm trying to think of what else I have to talk about today. Like I said, I wasn't as prepared as I would have liked to have been, but. With that, I guess, guys, do you have any questions, things you want to ask, features we haven't talked about, anything you'd like to see?
I would like to see some information on the one area that you can click on is dampers, because when you're looking at the information from I'm not sure what I'm looking at.
Okay, yeah, let me see if I can pull up some data here. I've got to have some, let's go to my Spec Racer Ford. I've got to have some data in that somewhere. And let's go to some point, because I think those are pretty good.
because it's kind of like a bell-shaped kind of graph in all cases. And
Right. Okay,
go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'm sorry. I have a tendency of wanting to answer the question right away. So I'm sorry if I talk over you. I don't mean to, and really should learn to stop. But basically, the idea on the shock graph here is what you're looking for is balance, and you start with any particular corner, and you want to look for balance in the low speed section of the graph. Typically, most guys will tell you that's under 1 inch per second is what you're looking at. And the reason why that's important is because that's where all the weight transfer happens. Okay, some people will say 1.5 inches. Somebody will say 2 inches per second. Look under there. But if you're looking at from under 1 inch per second, if you can get that balance set up properly, you should be in pretty good shape, I would think. And I hope, do we have shock data? Yes, we do. Yay, good. Okay, so what you're going to want to look for, and Ralph and I were having a discussion earlier in the week, or I'm sorry, Dave Chalk and I were having a discussion earlier in the week, and we were talking about it. And sometimes you can't get these balanced, and if you do, you end up making yourself slower, and that's a function of the car and the track and everything else. But ideally, what you're looking at is trying to get the low speed bump and rebound to be about the same. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to get the amount in rebound and the amount in bump to be about the same. The next step after that, the next granularity after that is you want to get the companion wheel on the same axle to be about the same, and then look at it from front to back as well to be about the same. So the front and the back of the car are being damped about the same. Now you can't always do that. That is just the guidelines. And actually Bob Knox's book, which if you haven't gotten that yet, it's a practical guide to race car data analysis by Bob Knox. You can get it on Amazon. I think it's awesome. It's a wonderful tool, and actually is where some of the ideas for some of the, especially like this page, came from. And he talks about that. I was looking to do more on shock absorbers, but I don't think we have the sampling rate that we need to be able to do really good shock work. And so I think that this is probably about as good as you're going to get. And you have to get adjusted to how you drive the car. If you find that a certain distribution works for you, well, then that's what you should be going for instead of the theoretical 50-50 match. So it's a little bit of touch and feel. I mean, shocks have always been one of the true last black boxes on a race car. And they do change a bunch with temperature, with usage, with velocities, suspension geometries, all that fun stuff. It changes how it all works. I mean, the final black box is still the tire. And even then, we're starting to understand how they work better now than we did, say, 30 or 40 years ago. Does that kind of answer your question, how you're supposed to look at this?
Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
It does.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's not a cure-all. It just kind of, I've used it when I found I just can't get the car balanced. I go back to here and I get it kind of as close as I can, and then I'll start tuning away from it when to gain speed back up. I'm the worst driver in the world, so I wouldn't take advice from me if I were you. But that's the way that's the way I do it. Let's see. But okay, anybody else? Well, if that's the case, guys, you've given me a lot to think about. And Ralph, a round of applause. I mean, I am really just so pleased with what you did. That was a great presentation. And if anybody has any other ideas, they'd like to do them, do one. You get 3 months free of iAnalyze for doing it. So I'd really appreciate if you step up and do it, because I think the more we can share, the more we'll learn, and the faster we'll all go. And with that, I guess.
Doug, real quick.
Yes, sir.
Who's the 70-year-old guy? Because he and I are the same vintage, and maybe he could email me and we could compare notes.
I think it was Richard Gallen.
That's me. Yeah, Richard Gallion. Yes.
Okay, Richard. Yeah, I'm in your vintage, so maybe we could get together and compare notes. And you're a road racer primarily.
Oh yeah. I used to run the ovals, but I got out of that and started. I got more enjoyment out of the road racing. And like I said before, I was doing the FW31, but it was just too fast. So I slipped over in the vintage market and got the Lotus 79, and I think I'm gonna get the 49 when whenever.
I get a feeling that we guys, because I'm 66 and we're skewing the.
Yeah,
This is going to be the old folks home.
Nobody wants to race with us.
And one thing I did want to tell you guys that I'm forgetting about, but I will be having a forum on the website probably by middle to end of next week. So we'll be posting a lot of things, and all you have to do is be a registered user, and you can go on, you can post stuff, all that fun stuff.
Cool.
So that's and you can post videos, laps, whatever, all the standard forum stuff.
That'll make things nice.
Yeah.
Richard, what was your last name? Quick, I'm sorry.
Gallion, Gallion.
So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So
No problem.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I sent you my email address, Doug, so you can go ahead and get a hold of me.
Awesome, great, thank you, Kyle.
That's usually one of the easier ways to get a hold of me between that and Facebook.
Sure, yeah. Face what? Huh? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, Kyle, thank you. And Ralph, man, you're my hero today. Great job. And so I guess we're gonna end the meeting now, and I'll see you guys. I hope I'll see most of you on the racetrack in about 10 minutes over at Talladega.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
Which car combination? Which car is it, by the way? I don't remember seeing that in email.
Oh, it's Cup Cars.
Okay, that's what we were figuring.
Yeah, I wanted a track I could almost keep up with you guys in, so,
Is this a hosted session or one of the
It's a hosted
standard
session.
one?
It's a hosted session. It's a hosted session.
Okay, and you're the host?
Yep, just look for iAnalyze Racing. It's on there.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you, Doug.
Is it going to be passworded or no?
No, it's not. It's open.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate everything. I'll see you on the
Thanks,
racetrack.
Doug. Thanks, Ralph.
See you there.
Thanks, Doug.
Super evening. Thanks.